his Texas TV series was kind of cheesy.
Walker, Texas Ranger.
Yeah, I didn't like that, but I liked his
That
old
was
stuff.
that was
It,
long running though. That I actually used to watch a
I,
few
I
episodes.
know
I didn't
it's
care
because
for too much.
he's got so much charisma. This is really funny, because 2 days ago, I clicked on a Chuck Norris video, and I won't mention the website because I don't want to, interfere with what you're doing. But he mentioned three things, and I'm all over this. I've been over this for 20 years. Gut health with good bacteria,
Yeah.
lack of nutrients he addresses with superfoods like barley, kale, alfalfa, etc. And he addresses the rapid aging, and he has some very interesting, it sounds like it's from India, the country of India, some anti-aging. And I'm thinking about buying what he's selling, and it's not the
Well, the
same
guys, the
websites.
guys still hitting a heavy
He
bag. I could say,
81.
go
I
ahead.
thought I wrote a message to a friend of mine. I said he looks 65.
Yeah, I mean, it is about. It's all about anti-aging. And I'm just getting started on it right now in my 40s. Well, anyway, Jim, let's get started
Okay.
on. I don't even know where to begin. So the economy to me seems like it's garbage. Everyone else agrees. What's happening to the dollar? I've heard that it was June 9th was the end of the petrodollar. Is that rumor? Is that fact?
Uh, let me just launch off because once I
Okay.
get going, it's going to be hard to turn
I
me
know.
off.
Please watch yourself for this
Oh yeah,
YouTube.
yeah. Oh yeah. Um,
You
the
can go full
Saudi.
on the
Okay,
other channel, okay? Don't do it
I
here.
understand.
All right.
All right. It was in early to mid 2023 last year that the Saudis made a deal with China to accept for oil payments the Chinese yuan. I marked that as the end of the petrodollar in my book. Because I don't care about formality. I care about actual events and function. And what happened was the UAE followed suit. They started accepting yuan for oil and gas payments. And then the entire Persian Gulf did. And before that, the Iranians had already for 5 years taken Chinese yuan. And then something happened later in 2023 that confirmed it. In my book, OPEC then adopted the Chinese yuan for Nigeria, Indonesia, and Venezuela, three important producers. So in my book, the petrodollar had an end in its function a year ago. The Saudis made it formal. Now, I'm a guy who likes metaphors because I have a lot of people who say, Jim, keep your good explanations because these are complex concepts. Imagine a guy dies, and then 3 weeks later they have a funeral, or 2 weeks later they have a funeral, and they have a viewing of the body. Well, did he die on the day of the funeral? No, he died on the day of his death. Okay, the petrodollar died a year ago when the Saudis began to accept the Chinese yuan because the entire Persian Gulf followed suit, and so did OPEC. All right, it's a very big deal.
So how are
Because
we hanging on? How is the dollar still hanging on? And you just said earlier before we started recording that it's stronger than it's ever been.
no, no,
How?
no, no. You got to be very careful with the words.
Okay.
The dollar is being rejected and it's rising in value. That doesn't make it strong.
Okay.
The Japanese sold $180 billion worth of treasury bonds 2 years ago, and the dollar went up 22% relative to the yen. The dollar is going up when it's being rejected. It is a paradox.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. All right. This is very difficult to absorb. When the Japanese did this, what they did was they reduced their dollar reserves that were backing their Japanese yen currency. And when you drop your reserves backing your currency goes down. Okay, this is paradoxical. There's so much more to this. Now, you didn't know me 5 years ago, 6 years ago, Nino, but I made a wild forecast that came true, a wild forecast. I said the dollar is going to go up, up during its rejection and then vanish. It's going to go up during its rejection. Central banks are
Yeah,
going
so
to.
you're right. That's what's happening right now.
It's
So
what's
then when you
happening now.
say when
We're
you say it
pushing.
vanishes, are you going to say they're going to try to take us into this digital
Yeah,
currency,
something like that, or a
or will we
gold-backed
go back to a gold-backed note?
treasury dollar. That's what we're looking at. I think it's got a nickname of the rainbow dollar. Okay, there's more to this. The derivatives, like interest rate swaps are often called the bond derivatives,
It's
but
going to
the
be called the rainbow dollar.
I hope not,
Ooh,
because I
they're
don't
going to have
like
fun with that one.
I
Hey,
don't
hey,
like
hey.
I don't like the image of rainbow. I know, but that was because it had different colors,
Oh
like the,
boy.
the 5, 10, 20, 50, 100, they all had different colors.
They're going to be
Anyway, let's
very
not get
happy about that one.
let's not get caught up with the rainbow. Okay, Nino, there's a very big phenomenon. When the bank derivatives get liquidated, they need more dollars to liquidate. So the dollar goes up again when it's being rejected. The derivative contracts require dollars. There's more. Emerging market nations are in trouble because we're raising interest rates. Well, their debt is dollar denominated. So their debt is getting more painful. Think of like a debt for Pakistan or Sri Lanka, okay? Not exactly third world, but on the edge of the third world. Their debt is in the dollar. To pay it off, they need to get some dollars. So more dollar demand. So it's treasury bond rejection, it's derivative liquidation, and it's emerging market debt satisfaction. For all these reasons, the dollar goes up. Now, I told people 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, let me know when the dollar goes down because I think you're dreaming. Now, you look at the dollar index, it's pushing 105. That's the upper edge. It's not dropping. And there's so much more to this. And we can talk more later, but let me just say that if the dollar goes down with respect to the dollar index, that means the euro is going up. What is strong about the European economy? Nothing, exactly nothing. Exactly nothing. I mean, nothing, negative nothing. Okay, horrible situation. So the dollar can't go up cannot go down relative to the euro. All right, we've got a lot of unsettled issues in the United States economy. We've got inflation being understated. We've got joblessness being understated. We've got even crime statistics being understated. We've got they're ganging up in the BRICS against the United States. In late May, I believe it was, no, gosh, I don't remember exactly. I think St. Petersburg was the second week of June. The SPIEF, St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, which has displaced the Davos Forum. The Davos is for the banksters, and SPIEF, St. Petersburg, is for the BRICS and the Eastern nations, if you will. They had $70 billion worth of contracts with 23 countries. And they made a lot of progress with what was called the unit. Now, the unit is 40% gold and 30% each of the two currencies that are involved, like, say, Argentina and China with the grain deal. Okay, so the BRICS have now the architecture of something that they're working on and have actually tried out. They've experimented with it. They call it the unit. Remember months ago, they were talking about, well, the BRICS are going to do a gold token. Well,
Yeah.
this is their compromise. It's not a gold token. It has a gold, component. It has a gold component of 40%. Okay, and there are lots and lots of questions that arise. What will be the digital vehicle? What will the crypto device be that they use? Because Shanghai has set up a blockchain channel, and Shanghai is going to be to the BRICS what New York and London are to the West. Man, oh man, I tell you, I've never in my life seen more confusion economically and with policy. There's debate about what's going on at the border. I'd rather not get into that for this segment. There's debate about what's going on with battleground states that have, let's just say, reverse course on the election 4 years ago. So it's the tremendous confusion. I've got some insider scoop on a Supreme Court case. We'll save that for the next segment. But basically, let me just be really
does it
simple.
have to do with Brunson or no? A
Yeah.
different case. It does? Okay.
Yeah.
So is it good
Yeah.
or bad?
It's good for us. It's
Okay,
bad
so
for.
man, so we could talk about that because I can't even talk about that.
I know. That's why
That's like hot. That's like they
I
do
know.
not.
I didn't mention the name. You did.
Okay,
I didn't mention.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. There is so much going on. Okay. Let me just be very plain. I believe that we are not in a recession. I believe we're in a depression. Okay. They say, well, we're on the edge of a recession. Well, we're in a recession and it's a really bad one. Okay. They say we've got some inflation, but it's under control. It's not under control. So we got high inflation and we got a very bad recession. And you could make a very good argument that we're in an inflationary depression right now. Okay. As a result,
that's what's so strange is that here in the same segment, we're saying the dollar is being rejected, yet the value is going up, and the paradox, but yet we're in a depression. It's just crazy.
I know. I tell you, everything is quite confusing. And you know what makes it the underlying factor that makes everything confusing regarding what you just said is that we have an unbacked dollar. The dollar is backed by the printing press, you know, our military, our good faith and word. Well, you know, all of those are in question right now.
And the more that people are learning about the dollar and how it has zero value, it obviously loses confidence within the society and it starts dropping, correct? I mean, the more that people learn about this, that awaken to this, are like, man, it's just paper. It really starts losing value in public consciousness.
Turn it around. It buys less. It buys less. And therefore, it's losing value. But it's going up relative to the other countries of the world. And you know, I can't explain this component adequately because it's so difficult. We have nothing tangible backing the dollar. Therefore, all the other nations with a major forex currency, they have nothing tangible backing the yen, the euro, the pound. So everybody is in the same position of rising prices from reduced purchasing power. We're all in the same spot, but we're better off because we can print money. We're better off. Okay, you know, we're not. Okay, I've mentioned that we're in danger of a government shutdown and government default from debt.
Yeah.
But it's not a tremendous risk because we can print money. But when we print money, our dollar purchases less. It doesn't go down in value. It has less purchasing power. It's a fine distinction. It's subtle and it's very real. And it's hard to wrap your head around sometimes. I have clients who tell me, Jim, you're crazy. The dollar's going to get trashed. I said, yeah, and it's going to go up in value. What? Well, wait a minute. We just broke 105 on the dollar index a few months ago, and on a repeated basis, we can't stop the dollar from going up in value while it's being rejected. This is messy, Nino. Yeah, you're going to really impress that microphone. Okay, we're going to see a lot of things resolved in the next few months because they have to be resolved.
As we go into November.
Yes, and I think we're going to see some events before November.
Events like a
change of the guard. Something is going to happen.
Yeah. Yes,
a change of the guard. I like to be vague. I got my metaphors. You know, I know how to describe things
before, during, or after.
Before, during, and after. Yes.
Okay, so we're going to see it transpire okay.
I think we're going to see events before, during, and after.
Well, let's go to .tv to cover that. And then I also wanted to show the audience something else we're going to be covering, which I find fascinating because you have some intel on this. and it is right here. It's kind of celebrity news a little bit, but this man right here, what really happened to him? You know what I find really weird about this? Look at his pupils, man. Look at his pupils. I don't know. They're like slits, or it's just a reflection. I don't know. It's weird. That's the mugshot they're using on the internet. But you have some fascinating intel on this.
Well, I've got some scoop. I wouldn't call it highly reliable scoop or intel. I would just call it really cool grapevine information.
And
And
on
I'll
Miley
share it.
Cyrus, right?
Yeah,
Okay, this is interesting because
I think she is a absolute gorgeous beauty and talented. I actually liked her with that Montana. What was the name of that show? Something Montana.
Hannah Montana. That's what she was
Hannah
like 12,
Montana.
Jim. What's wrong with you?
I don't care. I don't care. I had little kids in the room and they were watching it, and I thought, wow, that is going to be a beautiful woman, and she's blossoming. I just thought she was extraordinarily talented. But, you know, let's just say, Miley, you had a big mouth.
Wow. All right, let's get.
It's good to be back. I got to say that when I was a younger guy, I was working as a marketing research analyst at Digital Equipment Corporation. It was the early 80s and then the late 80s. And I read about something and I thought, this is wild. It was around 1990, maybe 91, could be 92. I don't know. I don't care. But it was around 1990. And we began to see the Japanese go to 0%. And that's where the ZIRP, zero interest rate policy, came about, that acronym. And I thought, that's crazy. What are they doing? You can't do 0%. Money must cost something. So I dug into it. And I used to read Barron's more than I read Wall Street Journal. I like Barron's. I liked a guy named William Pesek, P-E-S-E-K. I thought he was great. He taught me a lot about the bond market. And Jim Grant taught me a lot about the bond market and monetary policy. Here's what I learned, Patrick. The Japanese had a problem. Their problem was too much success. They turned things around in the 1970s with quality control. They brought in a guy named Deming. Deming was rejected by American industry, and he went to Japan and became a god, quality control god. Okay, so Toyotas became really good cars in the 1980s because they turned their quality around. There's a lot of information that I'm going to skip over. But Japan, essentially, in the 1980s, had a success story that caused them a big problem. They became an export industry giant. We had Toyota, we had Honda. Back then there was Nissan. They called them Datsun. Datsun got absorbed by Nissan. There was Honda. Honda didn't even make cars back then. They made motorcycles. They made lawnmowers, stuff like that. We had Nikon cameras, Leica cameras, Nikkei cameras. You had all kinds of things. You had Mitsubishi cars. You had Toshiba computers. You had a lot of different little computers that competed in the PC market. Okay, here's the big problem. They had so much export surplus that their currency was rising, and it rose too much. And remember, always remember, Japan is on a short lease from Wall Street and the U.S. government. They are a vassal state, along with Germany, the losers of World War II, or so we're told.
So we're told.
So we're told. There's a lot going on behind the scenes. We won't get into that. But Japan appealed to the United States and said, what are we going to do? We got too strong a currency. So the United States said, why don't you start spending money like lunatics with construction projects, roads to nowhere, bridges to nowhere, ports that aren't used, highways that, kind of like the Chinese empty cities. But Japan invented that. They had roads to nowhere. And there weren't even controversies about where's this going. It said, well, it's a road to nowhere. Don't worry about it. were making jobs. What they were doing is they were producing deficits. And now Japan has a bigger deficit compared to their GDP than the United States does. Okay, at the same time, the United States had a real big epiphany. Why don't we drive down your interest rates? Okay, little known to a lot of novice financial types is that the currency is largely a function of the interest rate for the country that owns the currency. Yeah. Every time they raise interest rates for the dollar, for the Fed, the dollar has a rally. Every time they lower the rates, you get a bond rally, but you get the dollar going the other way, going down. Okay, it's so basic, and I got stories about that. One I had a disagreement with Rick Rule of Sprott, and he's a great guy, and he's a brilliant guy, and he's very friendly, and he was nice to me in my early years. But I had a disagreement with him. I told him the United States is lowering interest rates. No, what was it? He said, oh gosh, I don't want to get into the dispute because it involved interest rates and deficits. And I was relying on the argument that if you lower interest rates, you're going to lower the dollar value. Okay, so here's the crux of the matter. United States Wall Street bankers said to Japan, why don't you go down toward 0%? That'll eliminate your strong currency. So they did. And Wall Street stepped in and began, I hear 2 trillion, okay? 2 trillion was borrowed over numerous years, borrowed from the Bank of Japan at near 0% and invested in the United States Treasury bonds.
Now, did the U.S. sort of coerce them as a vassal?
Yes.
It was something they didn't really want to do.
I don't think they wanted to do it. I thought they realized, I think, it's my opinion, they realized that that's a disastrous policy if kept for multiple years.
Yeah.
But once the Wall Street crew got in there with, I just call it the $2 trillion yen carry trade. And back then, we're talking about 1990 decade. So we're talking about, 5, 6, 7% long bond and maybe 0 or 1% Japanese borrow. So you got a 6% delta. They call it the VIG.
Yeah.
The delta is 6%. And if you let's not put leverage on it, okay? I mean, if you put futures leverage on it, you can amplify it by 20-fold. And obviously it's what they did, okay?
Of course.
It's what they did, and they always claim, well, we know how to do this. This is our science. We have the brain power. We have the computers. We have the models. We have experience. Okay, so let's just say they were making 100%. Okay, leverage off 5 or 6, 20-fold is 100%. They're making 100% on a $2 trillion trade. Now, for those who think these are wild numbers, you're dead wrong. They're actual numbers. They're actual numbers. Wall Street was earning hundreds of billions of dollars on the yen carry trade, and it never went away. So now.
So just to specify really quickly, and then I'll let you continue.
Yeah.
The carry trade, the basic principle is to borrow against. Can you just explain the basic principle? I don't want to mess it up. Just
you borrow at 0% money, and you invest on 6% return in the
and you capture that VIG like you were talking about.
And you try to make sure that the currencies don't swing.
Right.
But
that's the risk. That's the risk.
They are.
That now they are. Got you. Okay, continue. Go ahead.
Okay. Now you have a discount on what they borrowed because the yen has gone down 20%. The yen has gone down 25%. So the yen carry trade is making a lot of money and is presenting a climax for the Wall Street managers of the yen carry trade. Now, there are a lot of mysterious parts to this, and I can't say that I've got it all figured out. I got the rudimentary parts. Right now, Wall Street is thinking Japan is starting to raise interest rates. Japan is abandoning the treasury bond. They're selling treasury bonds. They're raising interest rates. They are buying gold. They're causing a problem in the gold market along with China. We need to close out the yen carry trade. So they need to pay back Japan. And remember, in the news we've had in the last week that the Federal Reserve is entertaining the notion of supporting Japan for assisting with their currency. How do you do that? You buy back on the yen carry trade. You see? That's where it figures in. Now, I heard a couple of analysts make a comment in the last week, just the last week, that a disaster is building now in Japan, and it's going to spread to the U.S. financial markets. Let's just say Wall Street banks. There's a disaster building in the Japanese financial system. Could it be the end of the yen carry trade with the Wall Street bankers buying back, closing out their yen borrowing, and lifting the yen? Okay, they need a lift in the yen. They're going to be asking Wall Street, pay back on the yen loans for your yen carry trade. Pay back the $2 trillion. Even if it's $1.5 trillion, it's a big amount of yen to pay back. Now, that's only half the story. What's the other half? They have to sell the treasuries. The Wall Street crew has to sell the treasuries. Okay, I do not believe that locked in the $740 billion of unrealized, let's just call it bank asset losses. They're treasuries. Come on, get real. I do not believe that it includes the yen carry trade.
Oh.
Okay. Another $2 trillion on the table, losing money. Okay. Now, when they put on the yen carry trade, they roll that over. You don't just hold that from 1995. You roll it over to the prevailing rate. Well, what was the prevailing rate in the last 7, 8, 9 years? 2.5%, 3% on the long bond. Okay. My point is that the other side of the yen carry trade is a disaster for Wall Street, closing out the yen carry trade and selling treasuries that they were earning 6% over their borrowing rate in Japan. Okay.
Wow.
Why doesn't Wall Street do it? Because it starts what's called the convexity principle. Once it begins, they lose control. If one or two Wall Street banks, okay, I made this point a month ago and 2 months ago, that if one or two big Wall Street banks start selling treasuries, the bond yield is going to go up, their losses will increase, and it'll encourage the other big banks to sell. And before you know it, they lose control. We're up at 7% on the long bond, and it could go higher. It could go 8%. It could go 10% if they lose total control. Now, add to the mix, closing out the Wall Street yen carry trade with $2 trillion on the table, borrowed from Japan and managed all these years. We're talking about almost 30 years. Okay, I believe that has produced off-balance sheet profit for Wall Street. What have they done with that profit? I believe they've been buying gold. I believe they've been buying gold for the last 10 years. I did a consult call, and I got to be careful with my description. I did a consult call several months ago with a fellow, and I'm not going to describe him, except to say that he was doing consulting work, financial planning, and accounting work for a couple of Wall Street banks. And he said, he said, Jim, you need to know this. They all have significant gold reserves. Every Wall Street bank has significant gold reserves off balance sheet. They've been accumulating year after year after year. I believe they've been using the yen carry trade to provide some of the profit for that. Now they need to deal with any, You can't dance around this. We're going to have a Treasury bond default. We're going to have a U.S. government bond default. We're going to have a U.S. government debt default. Now, remember, Trump has made a couple of indications just in the last 2 months. Trump has said one of my first orders of business is going to be to manage the U.S. government debt default. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can't do that without a bond market default.
That's right.
And a bond market default is happening under our noses. I believe that it's a 2, 3, 4-year process. I believe the foreigners are now taking a haircut on bonds that they're selling. They're not getting 100 cents on the dollar. Okay, they're taking a loss just from the higher interest rates in the last 2 years. I believe they're taking an additional loss by taking the funds in their domestic currency. Now, let me make a point apart from the yen carry trade. There's a lot of buzz out there, and it is wrong buzz. The wrong buzz is saying that foreigners are selling treasury bonds and the money is going to come back to the United States and cause inflation. Well, that's just dead wrong. If France or Norway or Saudi Arabia or UAE or other countries are selling treasury bonds, they're taking their domestic currency in their own banks. It's not coming to the United States.
Right.
The risk for price inflation in the United States is no buyers of our current operating deficits that we monetize. And we're going to see, I think we're going to see 2021 type price inflation again. I mean, like 12, 13, 14, 15%. This is just me. I'm stubborn, Patrick. I don't look at what the government says is their price inflation. I just know that it's always around 3, 4, 6%. Okay. And it's all designed and gimmicked and bullshit. I don't pay attention.
So you're saying that the stories that we're hearing about bonds being related to inflation, the Treasury bond crisis, really, that's not the real story. You're saying
no. Don't get me wrong. Foreigners selling Treasury bonds does not bring money back to the United States to cause inflation.
To inflation in that way.
It's the United States government deficits that we monetize. We cannot sell securitized bonds in the volume necessary. So we have to print money to cover it. And that is the source.
I get you. Okay.
Of our price inflation.
Right, so it's not so much them dumping the treasury bonds, it's the fact that they can't sell any new ones.
We can't sell any new ones, and we can't find any buyers for those that are being refunded. I don't like that word, the maturing. And we got $10 trillion this year of maturing treasuries. $8 trillion in long maturity and $2 trillion in short maturity.
Right.
That's hard to describe because I don't like the word refunding. We need to find funding. We must find funding for $10 trillion in maturing treasuries. Okay, remember, there was a few weeks ago that we had what was called a successful treasury bond auction. It was a joke. It was an effing joke. They said they had a $25 billion successful treasury bond auction. And I say, what about the other $970 billion for that month? Because it's $1 trillion a month.
Mm-hmm.
$25 billion, they talk about, okay. I don't want to belabor the point, but we got a lot of maturing treasuries that we cannot find adequate bond investors to bid on. We have a very critically low bond bid for treasuries. And I'm just going to say it. I believe the Exchange Stabilization Fund is grabbing a lot of the excess treasuries that no one wants to buy.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to stress the Exchange Stabilization Fund because it is a $10 to $15 trillion slush fund used to rig financial markets. And Rob Kirby discussed it in the Russian press, and they murdered Rob Kirby. Okay?
Yes.
He had a bi-weekly column in Moscow Financial Press, obviously translated into Russian. But what he did was he described the most vulnerable U.S. government slush fund to an enemy state. I don't do that. I actually told Rob, leave it alone. And he said to me, quote, "What can they do to me, Jim?" I said, "They could kill you." And he said, quote, "Let them take their best shot." They did, and they killed him. Okay, so anyway, the ESF is kind of a wild card, and let's leave it alone, but put it on the shelf. We cannot find adequate funding for all the maturing U.S. treasuries this calendar year. We're going to be using the ESF and the printing press. I believe the ESF is going to manage the refunding for foreign holders, and I believe that the monetary press, printing money, is going to manage the new debt. That, if we're creating an additional trillion every 100 days, then you cannot, with a straight face, say we're going to have a $2 trillion deficit. You have to make it bigger than 3, or else you look stupid that you can't extrapolate. If it's a trillion in 100 days, what is it for 360? It's going to be over 3 trillion. I'm just saying it's like 3.25, 3.4 trillion. Okay, we're now at the point where the interest rate, the interest cost, the borrowing cost is over 1.2 trillion annualized now. We're doing 100 billion a month in borrowing cost. Okay. Why do I drive this point home? We're going to have a bond crisis. It's going to have some impetus from the yen carry trade. It's going to have some impetus from U.S. big banks that cannot manage their underwater portfolios. It's going to be also big banks that have to buy back from the bank term funding program. Remember that waiting room for bankruptcy?
Yes.
Well, it got closed down in March. Okay, we're now more than 2 months into that. Mm-hmm. They've got to buy back all those assets where they were given book value. Now, let me give you a quick lesson. If you've got, say, $10 billion in assets, book value that you borrowed, and you can only sell them for $7 billion on the open market, you're in the hole $3 billion on wiping out that account, nullifying, expunging that account. The big banks are in so much trouble, it is not even possible to quantify. Okay, they're also in trouble with their gold shorts and their silver shorts. I like the description that the banks are in a very vulnerable position with their gold short contract portfolios, and silver is the fuse. They cannot stop silver. I got some quick notes here. These are just quick notes to point out how out of control it is. London has 30 times less silver in their vaults than they do gold. What's another one? The open interest for silver alone is on the order of 8 times the annual production of silver, about 8 times. This is out of control. The daily trade volume for gold is about 200 million ounces. The daily trade for silver is almost 3 billion ounces. We're going to run out of silver. Now remember that little harlot, Janet Yellen, she went over to China and she asked them to make fewer electric cars and to import less silver. And they basically said, F you, patted her on the head and pointed out that in a couple of days it's time for her to leave. They were very polite to Yellen, but they were extraordinarily impolite to Blinken, who I believe is a fake Blinken. That harlot Janet Yellen, I believe that's the real harlot Janet Yellen. They also told the Chinese, we want you to buy less gold to fortify your foundation for the yuan currency. And they told Yellen, well, thanks for your advice, but that's not in China's best interest. And we're going to continue to make electric cars. China has now control of the gold and silver market. I've been making this point for 3 or 4 months. Ever since December and January, Shanghai has had control of the gold and silver market. Right now, I think the next morning, tomorrow morning, we're likely to see the gold price $50 higher in Shanghai and the silver price $4 higher in Shanghai. I believe Yellen made a deal with the devil. I believe it goes like this, and it's hard to confirm because we never are told what they really did behind closed doors. I think Yellen said to them, okay, if you're not going to stop buying silver, we'll at least make ours available for you, and we'll make a managed delta of $4. In other words, we're going to make sure COMEX is $4 cheaper for you to buy. And you can use exchange for physical for the contract completion and take delivery in Hong Kong. And Andy Shechtman, I tell you, every time I listen to Andy Shechtman, I learn some new things. He details the dynamics of the differences and the arbitrage. And I learned about how they use from him, how they use the exchange for physical to take delivery in Hong Kong. China is buying in New York and taking delivery in Hong Kong for silver also. And then what do? Well, they put it in an armored truck caravan and, it's loaded down. Okay. When an armored truck is loaded, it goes down. They got the suspension to manage it, but it's like a several 100-mile trek to Shanghai from Hong Kong. Anyway, the point is that a compromise was made with the devil where I believe Yellen said we can buy time by managing an arbitrage and allowing you to raid New York and London, and we can buy time. Okay, these people don't think about what happens after the passage of time. Right. They think about we're going to be okay next month, but they're going to be dead in 6 months. Okay, that's how I like to think of it. Okay, there is so much going on with the arbitrage. And I mentioned the biggest arbitrage in modern history, the yen carry trade, $2 trillion. Now, there's another arbitrage, and this is far more complicated and insidious. Can I switch over to
We're
Switzerland?
Talk about Switzerland, yeah, okay.
Okay.
Just to sort of sum up what you've been saying so far. So $10 trillion is what we're looking at in terms of maturity yields this year that they're on the hook for. And then on top of that, we're talking about this arbitrage having to do with the yen carry trade at an additional $2 trillion. So that brings us up to
not adding that. Well, wait, be careful with the words.
Okay.
Wall Street is likely to close out close to $2 trillion in treasuries purchased from borrowed Japanese money 30 years ago and rolled over and rolled over and rolled over. If you're still making money on it, you don't close it out.
Right.
We're talking about hundreds of billions each year in profit.
And you also mentioned, not to get back into it, but you also mentioned the ESF is sort of the counterbalance to everything that's happening behind the scenes that's keeping them propped up. And your estimation is it could be up to 15 trillion. So we're getting dangerously close there to that breaking point. I think that's sort of where you're.
I think so, Patrick.
Okay.
Imagine that if the ESF has 15 trillion, mostly in treasury bonds, imagine the borrowing capacity. Well, they can put, up on collateral 2 trillion and manage all of the foreign expected purchases that does not happen for the current deficit, the current year. Okay, when you got 15 trillion in slush fund, you can do a lot of things.
So can, yeah.
Okay, let's leave alone the ESF. I'd like to really leave it alone.
All right, so
it gives me
over to
a shrill. Yeah, okay, Switzerland.
Yeah.
Okay, now there are a lot of people, including you, because you were just a younger man in 2011 and 12.
I was just waking up around that time, really.
Yeah. Well, I was 9 years into my newsletter. Okay, I was not a young pup. And back then, we were on the tail end of the pigs' debt crisis. Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain. They all started to see their interest rates go up toward 8 to 10%. Now, on the back end of that, around 2011, there were a lot of people who thought, well, the pigs nations in Europe did not fix anything. So there was an exodus out of the euro. Now, if you're an Italian, or you're a Frenchman, or you're a Belgian, or you're a German, or you're in Liechtenstein, and you're holding euros, you're going to want to trade it for something that you're familiar with. So what's your safe haven? It's Switzerland. A lot of Europeans dumped their euros and bought Swiss francs. And it caused a problem in 2011. The Swiss franc went up too much. Now, for those who don't know, in the United States, it is appalling to me how little Americans know about foreign countries. It is appalling to me how little Americans know about what the dollar is in foreign trade, in Forex central bank savings accounts. They're dumber than rocks, okay? And it's appalling. So the Europeans were thinking, I'm just extrapolating on the thought process. Hey, let's keep it in Europe. Let's sell our euros. We live in Italy. Let's sell our euros. We live in Belgium. Let's sell our euros. Let's buy Swiss francs. So they did. And the Swiss central bank had a reaction. They said, we're going to maintain a 120 euro peg for Swiss francs, the Swiss currency, not to be confused with the French franc. I don't know why they have the same name. Not important. But they maintained a 120 peg for the euro. They called it the Swiss euro peg. And what it meant was that the Swiss central bank bought hundreds of billions of dollars in euros. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So they bought the euro, and essentially they sold the Swiss franc. They brought it back down to where they wanted. And that's the Swiss euro carry trade.
Okay.
Now, this gets complicated. I've explained this before, but I think now it's going to maybe come to a head. And I'll explain why.
That's the same basic principle, but you're about to add the complexity. So it's the same basic, the carry trade that we talked about with Japan, the same basic principle of what happened with the Swiss franc and the euro, but it gets more complicated.
Yeah, but they didn't have an interest rate differential.
Okay, so all right, so there's the difference then.
What they were basically doing is they were preventing the Swiss currency from going up too much. And they were going to just stockpile euros. And I don't want to get into the issue of euro bonds versus Swiss bonds, because the Swiss actually have a low interest rate. It's not a critical part to my argument. I'd prefer to leave it alone.
Sure. Yeah.
The Swiss central bank bought up. They were the Hoover. They were they lapped up the discharged, rejected euros.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing so, they enabled a little sell-off of the Swiss, and they got it back down to 120. It got up, I think it got up to about 135. Okay, for those who don't, okay, this is the other end of my insult to Americans. The Swiss have a very balanced economy. They have pharmaceuticals. They have technology. They have weapons making. They have clocks. They have cheese. They have wine. They have a very balanced economy and an export trade. So they were facing annihilation of their export trade. No one was going to buy Swiss cheese. They were going to buy French cheese, Italian cheese. No one was going to buy their watches. They were going to buy Japanese watches. There was a threat to the Swiss economy. Now, here's where it gets complicated. In 2012, check the chart. We hit 1900 gold. and we went down for a solid decade. I call it the hibernation decade. We went down quickly to 1600, then 1500, and it stayed there year after year. I lost a bunch of clients, Patrick. My peak was 2015. I went down from there. 2016, 17, 18, I got the same complaint. The gold market is dead. Can't play this anymore. I'm getting old. I'm backing out of the newsletter. Good luck to you, Jim. You do good work, all the blah, 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 blah. Okay, so in 2015 or 16, the Swiss Central Bank had a disclosure that they were owners of a tremendous amount of U.S. stocks, and they were basically the FANGs. The FANGs. Facebook, Apple, Netflix, and Google. And back then, I believe the primary emphasis was Apple and Google.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked the question, did they use euros to buy it? And the answer was not clear because gold went down. And I heard from my best colleagues, they told me, Jim, got news for you. For the last few years, the Swiss have been involved in a buy dollar stock, sell gold trade that paralleled the Wall Street buy equity, sell gold. It's the same thing. The Swiss did the same thing, but they bought the FANG stocks, Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Google. And then it became clear to me that the Swiss were using narcotics funds to invest in U.S. stocks.
Sounds about right.
They went short gold, long FANG stocks. If you look at their portfolio, okay, this was something that I did not believe that the Swiss National Bank, that's the name of their central bank, Swiss National Bank. I did not believe that they wanted to disclose that they owned $1 trillion or $1.5 trillion of American stocks, and their biggest holding was Apple. I do not believe they wanted that to be known. Then we started to do the math and realize that they're purchasing.
Because of how they purchased it? Is that what you were implying there?
No. It's a number of things, Patrick. Why is the Swiss Central Bank, why are they buying U.S. stocks? Why?
I see. So they didn't want to expose.
What's their purpose? What's their vested interest? What are they doing? They were joining the Wall Street buy stock, sell gold strategy.
I got you. Okay.
Yep. And they were responsible. It became known by 2016 and 17 that the Swiss Central Bank was responsible for bringing down the gold price from 1900 down to 1400, where it hibernated for several years.
Gotcha.
At the same time, the volume of their U.S. stock portfolio was out of line for what they were doing with the gold market. And my suspicion was they were using narco money laundering funds.
Okay.
Now, fast forward, I'm going to just put a little addendum here. Fast forward to early last year when the Russians smashed Ukrainian money laundering centers. I made a forecast in February that Credit Suisse was going to enter failure. I said 3 to 6 months. They failed in 2 months, and it became quite clear all the different dynamics going on. United Arab Emirates was involved in that, but I did some homework, and I found out that the two giants in Switzerland, UBS and Credit Suisse, UBS was basically, primarily a wealth management bank, and Credit Suisse was a dirty money bank.
Narco bank.
And for those who don't quite know history lessons, Credit Suisse started right after World War II to create a bank monetizing stolen gold, and they monetized the gold and made credit from it to start a bank in Switzerland. Credit in Switzerland from stolen gold. Credit in Switzerland.
It's Swiss.
Credit Suisse.
There you go.
Okay, there's your name. And it turned out to be a correct forecast because by, I think it was late April, the Russians called the Chinese and said the Swiss banks are seizing or freezing Russian assets. So they called the Chinese and said, do us a favor, call up the Arabs in UAE and tell them to pull their $10 billion bid on the Credit Suisse emergency bond offering. It failed, and Credit Suisse entered failure, and they've never gotten out of the problem since. And the Swiss parliament refused to put up something like 10 or 20 billion euros. Maybe, no, I think it was 100 billion euros. It was a large swath of euros. And Credit Suisse has not gotten out of their hot water. Okay, back to the Swiss and the four-sided trade. Notice now that it's a four-sided carry trade. Buy the euro, sell the Swiss. Buy U.S. stocks, sell gold. When you unwind a carry trade, what goes up is what you were suppressing. They were suppressing the Swiss currency. Now it's going to go up. They were suppressing gold, and now it's going to go up. I believe some of the biggest buyers right now are Swiss banks pushing up the gold price. Okay, who has got that on their radar? Swiss banks buying up gold. They're closing out their short positions. I believe, Patrick, I'm just going to say it. I believe Basel is going to go long gold and long silver. They're not going to get in the way of this locomotive. They're not going to get run. This is not a truck convoy. This is a gigantic locomotive train with 200 or 400 cars on it, and it will not stop if Basel gets in the way. What we've got now is a massive short position in silver by Bank of America. That's my candidate for bank failure. They've got a massive short silver position. They're doubling down. They're on the wrong side, and instead of covering, they're doubling down. They're doing the same thing that Janet Yellen did. They're buying a month, and they're assuring their death in 3 to 6 months. Okay,
kind of makes you wonder who's pulling the strings behind them. If they're making those types of moves that are basically,
I think the White Alliance controls Wall Street right now.
Absolutely.
And I believe they control the Fed. In fact, Mike King made a point that confirmed some of they're more than suspicion. It's more like evidence is just flowing like a slow moving river. I believe it was 2019 that the Federal Reserve contract ended. I believe it was 2020 and 2021 wait a minute, I got that wrong. I think it was 2017, the Federal Reserve contract ended, and before Trump was out of office, he integrated the Federal Reserve and rolled it under the Department of Treasury because there was no contract in force.
Mm-hmm.
It was long before the 2020 election. I believe the Fed contract ended in, all you got to do is look at the 100-year contract from 1915 or so. They extended it. Anyway, I don't want to get caught up in the actual dates, but
that's interesting
because I'm not in command of those dates. There are too many numbers running around.
Okay. So you're saying it was well before the CARES Act in 2020. That's the story that a lot of folks have been sort of subscribing to, that during the height of COVID with the CARES Act, with Mnuchin used I think they're called special purpose vehicles to essentially to roll the Fed under the control of the Treasury. But you're saying it happened actually back in 2017 with the contract expiration.
Exactly.
Okay.
And if you look at actions by the Fed, they're not really constructive toward Wall Street banks. Now, you could say the CARES Act, what was that? That's the two the two-time feature, the 5 trillion and the 4 trillion for with a non-disclosure agreement for the Wall Street banks to offset their losses from the illicit economic lockdown. I will never call it a lockdown without using the word illicit. I will never call it the pandemic without calling it the fake or the bullshit pandemic. The Congress, which the bankers control, made the CARES Act to offer the 9 trillion to the bankers. Okay, the Fed, I believe, is under control by the White Alliance. They raised interest rates, which rendered Wall Street banks insolvent. I believe that the White Alliance ordered the Wall Street banks, you must follow this path. At the end of the road, it's your insolvency and destruction, but there'll be a new chapter. And I think the White Alliance is well aware that the Wall Street banks own a lot of gold. They're not going to be left out in the cold. I believe that the Wall Street banks not only own a lot of gold, but the Fed and many, many central banks that are insolvent now are going to get out of their insolvent position by loading up on gold off balance sheet and ordering and facilitating a 3,000 and a 5,000 and later a 10,000 gold price. That's not going to figure in. Silver is not going to figure in that plan. Silver is going to figure in a very different plan of rebuilding and reconstructing the economy using Tesla and other engineering patents. But okay, I want to make reference to something that's really important to me. I do not believe that there's two parts. One has to do with default, and the other has to do with the gold rally. I have not said that this June, July, now we're in June. I have not said in June, July, we're going to have a bond default. I have not said that. I've said we're going to have a debate about whether we're in a bond default.
I remember that. Yeah.
We're going to have discussion. And I've heard misquoting of what I've said. I did not say we're going to have a bond default. Oh, Jim really think we're going to have a bond default in June. No, I did not. We're going to have a debate on whether we're in that situation.
I recall that conversation. We've had that conversation. You've talked about the haircuts, and there's a point to be made there as to whether or not we're actually already in one when they're having to take a haircut.
I think we're 2 years into the bond default, and we have another year to go. But that's a different argument to make, a different discussion. Let's not get caught up in that. All right. The second point, and we're starting to see it. We're starting to see the bond market is rising on the bond yield. There's pressure on the stock market. There's a lot of complaints that where's the rate cut? I thought we were going to have a rate cut in February. Where's the rate cut? Where's the rate? Okay, we're not going to have a rate cut. We're going to bounce around from the arguments like, well, we still see price inflation, therefore we cannot do a rate cut. And then later, well, we still see a weak economy in the labor market. We cannot do a rate hike. We can't do a rate cut. We can't do a rate hike. This is my argument, Patrick, that we're caught in an inflationary depression. With the inflation, we cannot lower rates. With the depression, we cannot raise rates. So we're going to waver around playing a pendulum game. Well, we're going to cut rates. Maybe we might actually have to raise. We're going to cut rates. No, we might actually have. And we're going to just do this. We've been doing it now for 3 months. I've been saying this for 3 months. We're going to dilly-dally and not do anything. If anything, we do a rate hike. Okay, fine. The big point I want to make regarding the gold market is don't sell the pullbacks. Okay, we had a pullback from like 2350 to 2250, 2360, 2380 to 2250, 2270. It bounces around. Okay, so we sold off 100, 130 points. Big effing deal. What it does is it offers China and India a discount because they're the big buyers. China, Japan, and India are the big buyers. The East is controlling the gold market. Okay, here's my big forecast. And this is not, I'm not trying to make a big ballyhoo out of it. We got a 3-year gold rally. It started in the end of 2023. It's going to go into 2026. If you if you are upset that there's a 5 or 10% pullback, then you are not a very good student of the dynamics. Because I wrote a public article. It was on Gold Seek, and Kitco did not publish it, and Gold Eagle did not publish it. I gave them a chance, but they didn't even respond. They didn't even respond. But Gold Seek, that editor is my buddy. He's my buddy. And he published it right away. I had 20 reasons for the gold breakout. Now, the three obvious reasons: price inflation, credit crisis, and the specter of war. And I said, well, we got 17 others. We got banks that are in trouble. We have central banks that are insolvent. We have personal investors who want to trade out of their bank accounts and get into gold and silver, and trade out of their IRAs and 401ks and get into gold and silver. I got 30 or 40 clients that done that. We got central banks all across the Eastern nations, the BRICS unions. They're selling their treasury bonds and they're buying gold. We got the biggest transfer of wealth in a century. It's going to be trillions of dollars, mostly treasury bonds, that are going to go into gold. We have UAE that is in a very quiet war. UAE, United Arab Emirates, they're like cousins to the Saudis. They're in a very small war, Patrick, because they have offered to be the window for dumping treasuries for the BRICS nations.
Yeah, I remember.
They're also involved heavily in crypto. They invested $250 million in crypto channels and infrastructure. When you get the blockchain platform integrated with Shanghai, it's going to connect with Dubai in United Arab Emirates. And I believe they're going to use XRP. I still think XRP is going to go way over $100. Way over $100. Okay, the gold rally is not going to be brief. We're not going to stop at 2,500. If we get to 2,500 in the next month, which I think we will, June, July, we'll get to 2,500. It won't even be hard. We won't even break a sweat. We're going to, at the same time, probably break 40 in silver and threaten 50 quickly. I think before the leaves fall in autumn, I think we'll see 2,500 gold and maybe $50 silver. Okay, Michael Oliver is a guy with far more experience and expertise than me, and he's saying $50 silver before the elections. Okay, a lot of people think we're not going to have elections. I think we are. A lot of people think we're going to have more and more chaos and disruptions. I think we'll have some, yeah, but I don't think it's going to be sufficient to call off the election and to declare martial law in any way, shape, or form. I think Trump is largely going to run unopposed. Biden is going to, this is funny. Biden, or whoever the masked son of a bitch is, the Biden, let's just call him the Biden name or the Biden mask. I love calling it the Biden mask. I think Mike King called it the Biden mask. Whatever the Biden mask says, I think the Biden mask is going to try to drop out of the race and not be permitted, so that we have the weakest, most incoherent, most absurd election in modern history. Trump running essentially unopposed, and I believe he's going to win by 40 or 50%. It's going to be like a pro forma formal event that they conduct because we're supposed to have one. No one is going to want to take the place of Biden because it would ruin whatever political career they have. Even the robot Newsom, the fake governor of California. I don't think Big Mike, a.k.a. Sasquatch, Big Mike, Michael LaVaughn Robinson, who's known as Michelle, what's her name? Oh, yeah, Obama. Michelle Obama. Nice book, Michelle. Nobody bought it. They're piling up in empty warehouses now because nobody bought it. I don't think Michelle would want the exposure to prove that he has a, let's just say, male genitalia down there under the hood. Okay, so that's a showstopper. I don't think anybody else, even Governor Whitmer, the witch of Michigan, I don't think she'd want to step in. So the Biden mask is going to try to drop out and not be permitted and be held up on the left side, held up on the right side. Yeah, I'm in the Democrat convention. Vote for me. We still have the best fraud operations in place. Okay.
Can I ask you one question?
Go ahead.
The election, give you a little breather there. So,
sure, I'm getting a little tired anyway.
No, I figure you need a little sip of water there. But okay, so elections it's a great topic. We don't have to delve into it too much, but I just really quickly, do you think that at some point, because you said that you don't think martial law is going to be necessary, do you think that at some point, given the close to 500,000 sealed indictments that there are right now, and then the myriad of other issues in terms of disclosure, do you think at some point, even if we see the election go forward, we see Trump come back, do you think at some point they have to flip that switch in order to disclose everything that's been going on and make all of these mass arrests? I mean, how do you see that?
Flip the switch for what? Military rule and emergency broadcast?
For the EBS.
Emergency broadcast. I just want to be clear. Emergency broadcast.
Yes.
Let it be known who the traitors are. Well, we might get that done with Ivan Raiklin, the ex-Beret who's now an attorney. He claims he has the goods on 350 people in the deep state, and he wants Twitter, with permission by Elon Musk, to do a Twitter files on the 350 people. He wants to have deputized several thousand people in 50 states to do arrests. Okay, to answer your question in simple form, I think we're going to get to the point where the mainstream news before the election it's not going to be taken over in any overt form. I think it's going to be a transition, because I've already seen a few stories. There have been on mainstream news some stories about Biden. Is that Biden with a mask? Well, let's have a guest who can talk about. They're bringing up a lot of controversial topics.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's going to accelerate, so that by the time we get to October, we might have a lot of different stories on the mainstream news where emergency broadcast won't be necessary. But I believe the emergency broadcast is necessary. I'm not saying we're going to get there. I'm saying it is necessary. We need some form of publicity, disclosure, exposure, and the Twitter files would be a great way to do that with Ivan Raiklin. And the guy is just fearless. He was on the Nino show. He's been on a couple of other shows. I saw him on 2 of them. He wants to deputize. He wants retired soldiers to be deputized by sheriffs and go out and arrest these people for, he said, basic treason items like violating people's First Amendment rights to free speech. Okay, that is a basic right of Americans, free speech. Well, go after the censorship industry. That's what he wants to do. Okay, I believe we need that. We need the emergency broadcast, not just to identify the traitors. We need to identify those who have betrayed our country with foreign bribery. I mean external foreign interference, the Chinese. I mean criminal syndicate infiltration with narcotics. And let me just say something. I haven't brought up narcotics much except for Credit Suisse and Bank of America, but I believe that the glue, the lubrication for, say, the censorship industry, social media, MSM News, congressmen, certain high-level officers in the U.S. military, National Institute of Health, American Medical Association, big oil industry, it's narcotics war chest. of a few $1 trillion. We've looked the other way, and I've been criticized by my own family members and friends for 20 years. I said, we have the CIA running narcotics global monopoly ever since Afghanistan. Osama bin Laden was not in the caves of Afghanistan.
No, of course
he died in Karachi, Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
That's where his funeral was. How do I know that? Because one of my coworkers in 2003 invited me to a lunch, took me back to his office, and said, Jim, I am Pakistani. I have a degree from the University of Pittsburgh in computer science. I'm a database expert. I am working with you on your project right now. I want to show you the Pakistani news. It's in Urdu. Urdu has the Arabic alphabet with different accents, much like the Czech language has our alphabet with Czech accents, or Spanish or French with accents. He said, this is Urdu, Jim. I speak Urdu. It's my native language. And he was fluent in English. Great guy. His name was Ahmad, like 100 million other Arabs. Anyway, he's not Arab. He was Pakistani. Big difference. Big difference. He's West Asian Muslim. And he had pictures of the Osama bin Laden funeral in 2002. And he said, look, I'm going to read you. And he read in Urdu. He went in English, funeral 1 mile long, lots of pageantry, blah, blah, blah. He died of liver failure. The dialysis finally failed. There it is.
Yep.
Okay. That's my friend Ahmad. I lost track of Ahmad because I lost my job there. I lost my job and I started a newsletter. I had no idea what would happen in 2004 with a newsletter. Patrick, my first goal was to manage and survive my monthly expenses. Mm-hmm. You know, like $1,000 a month or $1,200 a month, and living like a pauper, not doing anything, no fun at all, no fun. But I did a little fun on a credit card. Anyway, that's another story. Then my second goal was, I sure would like to make my previous salary. That'd be cool. And then I had more ambitious goals, but now it's a very successful newsletter, and I'm very surprised. Okay, the message I have for people is hang on and do not sell out of gold and silver with pullbacks. They want you. They're going to try to do, they're still doing some naked shorts, and they're going to get in more and more trouble. We are about to see exchange traded funds, the ETFs. Okay, this has come out now in recent news. ETFs have been, what do you call it? They've been hedging their long positions by shorting gold in the ETFs. Mm-hmm. And they're going to get trapped. And these ETFs are going to blow up. And I'm hoping that it's the Swiss and the London bankers with SLV and GLD. GLD, what's that? The SPDR Gold Trust. It's going to blow up. It's going to just explode. They're going to go quiet. They're going to say, we don't know. We don't have any more records on what our vault holdings are, because they don't have anything. They're going to say, we're shutting down the fund. We're not taking new investors. Why? Because you're broke and you're bust. You're going to go bankrupt. You have lawsuits. Okay, SLV and what's the other one? GLD, they're going to go bust. The exchange traded funds are going to be the first visible victims. But I think we're going to see Bank of America go bust. We're going to see the Wall Street banks show up. A lot of losses for quarterly, what do you call it, resolution of some of their futures contracts in the precious metal arena. It's going to be very exciting. Let me make another wild forecast. We're going to have some multi-dollar up days in silver soon. I'll give you an example. I'll just make up something. We're sitting at 34. It's June 10th. And in 3 days, we're at 48. We're at 46.
Multiple.
And we have no idea what happened. What was that all about? It's the failure of ETFs covering their shorts accepting a loss, and it was a big loss. And if they didn't do that big loss, Patrick, it would have been double down the road. Okay, they're going to have to swallow their losses. Okay, if you see a pullback, let's suppose we go up to 37 in silver and come back down to 34. Buy. Okay, right now, I just got news yesterday. In Europe, the European Union, the financial regulators of the European Union just made prohibited any buy orders of Sprott gold and silver ETFs. Sprott PSLV, their exchange traded fund with real metal, SLV for silver, okay. PSLV, and their exchange traded fund with real gold, PHYS, the first four letters of physical. Okay. In Europe, you can only sell. You cannot buy now. They are panicking.
Wow.
Anytime you block purchase of something, and there are hundreds of other places that you can buy it.
That's
well,
great.
Yeah. What are they going to do? Well, they're not going to buy PHYS in Europe. They're going to buy Swiss PAMPs. You know, the 10-ounce bars. The PAMPs are beautiful. They're a work of art in addition to being a good investment. You notice that Costco had $200 million worth of gold items. Those were PAMPs. It's PAMP. I think it's product. Oh gosh, what's the A? Can't think of what the A is. Metal precious. Product application precious metal. PAMP. It's French. Produit application metal produit. No, metal précieux, precious, précieux. IEUX. It's précieux. Okay, I actually got, when I was a freshman in high school, I got compliment from my teacher. James, you have the best French accent in the class. Congratulations.
That's pretty good. I have to say that was
Produit précieux.
Not bad.
All right. Anyway, but now I'm all immersed in Spanish.
Yeah. Well, you have to be.
In metal precioso.
Yeah. Good old Costa.
Producto aplicaciones metal precioso. I call my sweetheart Preciosa. Hola, Preciosa.
I remember one show you were telling a story about how you were having an argument with somebody in Spanish, I think at the bank or something, and it was just hilarious. I don't remember what it was, but you were like yelling in Spanish, and I was like, this is just classic Jim.
I tell you, I insult people in Spanish. I got pretty good at it.
Yeah.
Tú eres imbécil. You're an imbecile.
I actually picked up on that one.
Well, here's one of my favorite. ¿Para qué tu mascarilla? ¿Es por esclavitud o ignorancia? Why do you have a mask on? Is it for ignorance or slavery?
Okay.
I got shot down. I have to be careful with that. A really nice looking guy was a guard for a supermarket. And I gave him a funny look because he had a mask on. I gave him a funny look, and he looked back at me like, what are you looking at me for? And I looked at him again and said, ¿Para qué mascarilla? Why a mask? And he said, cirugía. Surgery. And then he lowered the mask and showed that his upper lip had surgery from a motorcycle accident. I said, oh, no, it's ignorancia. No, it's esclavitud. It's cirugía. And he said, sí. Anyway, it gets funny because they don't expect gringos to speak Spanish. They don't. They think most of them are drunk and stupid, and they're right.
All right, let me ask you this, because I know there were a couple other things we wanted to cover today.
Go ahead. Let's do some quick shots.
Yeah, let's do some quick shots. How about what are your thoughts on? I mean, you mentioned crypto a little while ago, and I've been kind of curious why Trump all of a sudden seems to be doing an about face on crypto, talking about Bitcoin being a good thing, and it's almost like he had a long history of being very critical of it, and I'm wondering if you had any insights into what could be going on with that.
I can only say that when you're about to become the winner you had better embrace the consensus where you've made all your past errors.
So you think
He's
it's
been
about
wrong about
garnering?
Bitcoin.
He what?
I think Wall Street is investing in Bitcoin.
With the
I
ETF.
think narcos are investing in in Bitcoin. Narcos. Okay, if you're holding a container in a Greek port and it's got $7 billion in $100 bills, that's hundreds of thousands of $100 bills. Are you going to want to leave it year after year after year, or are you going to want to convert it to something in the electronic age?
Yeah.
They're going to bid up. I think Trump got word that Bitcoin's going to go to 100,000. You better get on board this, Donald, or you're going to look dumb. You think Donald ever wants to look dumb?
No.
He wants to look smart, and he wants to look like a stud. Okay?
So do you think Bitcoin?
Smart and stud.
You think Bitcoin is actually going to be around for good? Because there's been a lot of debate about that. A lot of folks think, certain ones like the 222 ISO coins like XLM and XRP, yes, but the prevailing consensus seems to be within the community that Bitcoin, well, I shouldn't even say that, not a consensus, but a lot of people are thinking that Bitcoin is
a lot of hubbub.
It's antiquated technology, really super slow, and it's like the brick phone, compared to the smartphone.
I don't care if it's slow. I just sold a little bit of Bitcoin and bought XRP. I thought, well, this is damn slow. I'll tell you what, I'm going to go do a quick errand and come back and see if the Bitcoin sale is done. So I came back in 15 minutes and it was done. So what?
So you think it's going to stick around as like the digital
I don't
gold
think
or
it's
whatever
going to
they
go
call it?
away. Okay, there's something I learned from an Asian client of mine, super smart and managing a significant amount of money. He said, Jim, there are two major buyers of Bitcoin. One is legitimate and one is illegitimate. The legitimate one is all the Asian fund managers. And that includes the Pacific Rim. He said, Pacific Rim, Jim, it's 1 billion people, okay? You got to get wise to the Pacific Rim. We don't have an Atlantic Rim. We have a little itty bitty Caribbean, and it's got some power. But the Pacific Rim, they like sending money to Germany, to France, to Norway, to the Arab world. And they do it in Bitcoin, and it's not visible. They also use what he called all the little tokens, all the little crypto coins, where you got to stack 1,000 of them or like 400 of them to make a penny. They don't price them. So the way they describe their price is, well, you got 250 per penny. Okay, that's a few zeros and a 4. Okay, it's less than a penny, 250 per penny. I had a guy told me 2 years ago, buy Stronghold, Jim. IBM WorldWire is behind that. And if you put $1,000 into it, you're going to be a millionaire in 5 years. It went up 8-fold last year. 8-fold. And it's still a 1/12 of a penny. It used to be 100th of a penny. Okay, the point is that this Asian fund manager said that they use Bitcoin and the little tiny crypto coins to move money around.
Right. Without
the U.S. tax, what do you call it? Tax ferry. I call them the ferrymen. Hey, you're moving dollars. We want 5%. Hey, you're moving dollars. We want 3%. What gives you the right? Well, you're using dollars. So they're not using dollars. Okay. The legitimate part is that Asian fund managers and a lot of others are using it. Bitcoin. It's not going to go away. It's legitimate movement. The illegitimate movement is from traffickers. Child trafficking, narcotics trafficking, Mexicans, Colombians, Ukraine, Eastern Europeans, and the Chinese. Never leave out the Chinese. Chinese are very involved in narco trafficking and child trafficking.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so if you want to move money around, if you want to say you got a shipment from Australia to China and you want to pay for it, well, you do it with Bitcoin and you have your Chinese managers do it with a Chinese bank in Australia. Okay, this is not going to go away.
Okay.
Okay, I think Okay, I think with Janet Yellen, the little harlot, I think she said Bitcoin. I think it was her. I think she said the other day Bitcoin could go to $1 million.
Really?
Now, yeah, yeah. Okay, I think
Well, my
100,000.
understanding, the reason I ask, and I'll let you continue. The reason that I asked is because my understanding was that Bitcoin was essentially a black hat DARPA creation.
So is email.
Okay, but that it
So
really
what?
wasn't going to, that it was ultimately going to be phased out, or there wasn't going to really have a place in the quantum financial system. So do you?
I think the BRICS will make sure that there is a channel and a window. I think Reggie Middleton will make sure there's a channel and a window.
So then how
Bitcoin.
do they mitigate? Okay, so how do they, you said that there's the legitimate use of Bitcoin, and then of course you've got all the traffickers, all the dark money that's going through there. How do they address that issue if Bitcoin is going to stick around?
What makes you think that the Western banksters are going to control the QFS and all the on-ramps and off-ramps of digital finance? What makes you think that the same criminals involved with the dollar management are going to be in control of the on-ramps and off-ramps of digital finance?
So it has to do with ultimately oversight by the white hats.
What part of decentralized is escaping you? Decentralized.
Well, it's already
Decentralized.
decentralized.
I know. Well, then you can't say that for centralized reasons it's not going to be part of QFS.
Okay.
On a decentralized manner, they will get the on-ramps. They will get the off-ramps. And maybe you won't even know that they exist. Maybe they'll do it with a form of a different cryptocurrency that you don't even know about. And then suddenly it's worth 100 times more. Wow, I missed the boat on XYZ crypto. What the hell is that? By the way, that was the secret project of the on-ramp to QFS with Bitcoin. Oh, I didn't hear about that. That's exactly right. You didn't hear about that. Okay. Decentralized means decentralized, and never miss the meaning of decentralized.
Okay, well, let's break that down a little bit. So it's currently decentralized, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but you're talking about you're focusing on QFF and the 2021 or whatever it's called. So what? The decentralized forces might find a way in and have a back door, or decide later that a compromise is made for a front door. We don't know who controls the QFS. We don't know what compromises are going to be made in order to have it installed. I think the mother of invention is from the father of compromise.
You think they're going to compromise with the banksters? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Well, I think that's already been well along. I think the banksters have helped us to smash Klaus Schwab. I don't think Klaus Schwab is around.
No, I agree with you on that.
I think the Rothschilds got smashed. The Rothschilds surrendered. And Ben Fulford, and I believe this, the only remaining house to the Khazarian mafia is the Rockefellers. And I'm scared shitless of them. They got hit squads. They own the energy industry. They got banks. They've got pharmacy industry. They got the medical industry, National Institute of Health, CDC. No wonder they're the last ones. Rothschild didn't have that portfolio of control. Hey, look, the decentralized aspect of digital finance is going to be its biggest sword, and the blockchain is going to be its biggest shield. These stories about Bitcoin and the demise, they're humorous. I remember in the end of 2022 when, I think maybe the Credit Suisse story might have been 2022, not 2023, when the Russians captured a lot of Bitcoin in Ukraine underground facilities. They sold off, and we had I think it was about a 55% decline in Bitcoin. Look it up.
Mhm.
I think it was like 57,000 down to something like 29. A real big decline. 24,000. JP Morgan came out and said Bitcoin going to zero. So how does a jackass reply to that? We just hit the bottom. JP Morgan said Bitcoin's going to zero in December of 22. I said that's the bottom. Was it the bottom? Yeah, it was the bottom. Okay, just go with these pronouncements and take a 180 twist. This is my response to Wall Street and all of your Bitcoin and crypto pronouncements. How's the SEC trials and tribulations with Ripple Tech going?
No.
All failed. Do they have a single success? No, not one. This bird is in place, okay? Everything they say regarding crypto is wrong.
Okay, fair enough.
So,
Well, the reason I asked the question wasn't to really to argue with you. It was more just to kind of get clarification, because my understanding is that once we moved in fully to the quantum financial system, which would be decentralized and actually real currency, constitutional money, gold and silver, there really would be no need for something like Bitcoin.
well, to me, it's kind of like saying that there'd be no need for using cash to buy marijuana, to buy a hooker, or to buy a congressman, or to place a bet in the NFL.
Okay, but I mean, so you equate cash, the need for cash, with the need for Bitcoin?
Yeah. How are they different?
Why not just use the cash? If it's, if you still have access to cash.
Well, how do you move cash from Australia to Italy?
On the QFS. Wouldn't you be able to do that?
Well, what if you don't want it to be seen? What if it's for a whole entire hotel of hookers that you're running?
Well, I guess that's kind of the idea there.
I repeat, you're going to need cash to place a bet in the NFL, to buy a hooker, to buy marijuana, to buy cocaine, to bribe a congressman. It's the same argument.
Okay.
Is the QFS going to eliminate criminality among the human species?
I kind of believe that it will, yeah, eventually. Maybe not overnight, but I do
eliminate criminality in the human species?
Well, I mean, maybe not entirely, but I don't think that it's going to. Well, you can laugh. You can laugh.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to laugh. Yeah, I'm going to laugh.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm going to laugh.
All
wow,
right.
We got the QFS. There's no more crime. Come on.
Why even bring it in then?
It's going to eliminate financial fraud that underpins the fraudulent monetary system across the globe.
Right, and most of the crime, most of the criminality has to do with what? At the end of the day, money.
Well, yeah, but
right?
Golly, we're going to have an honest global financial system, an honest banking system, an honest trade payment system, but we're still going to have hookers and betting on the NFL.
Okay.
Hey,
but
it's small time.
All right.
Hey, look,
let's move on.
I'm going to share with you something.
We can agree to disagree on it. That's fine.
Look, if you think we're going to get rid of larceny in the heart of man, you are nuts.
All right, Jim.
Hey, look. I heard from a military source that a target is put on Las Vegas. Let's watch, okay? Let's watch.
What do you mean by that? A target?
To remove their power. Now, that is a big drain. Las Vegas has got a nickname of lost wages. Okay? What happens in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas, including sex, fraud, robbery, murder, whatever. Okay. The NFL is not a business. It is an entertainment enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, not a sports business. Therefore, they cannot be prosecuted for fixing NFL games. Whoa. Nevada was one of the important states, didn't have a lot of electoral college votes, but it was an important state for maintaining the stolen election. I was amazed. Nevada too? Wow. I guess Las Vegas and all the dirty money. It just got involved with the dirty money of politics too. Hey, look, I just laugh, and I don't mean to insult, but wicked is the heart of man. We are going to be a species that sins and that commits crime. You think we're going to eliminate murder and robbery? You think we're going to eliminate rape, car theft, carjacking? You think we're going to eliminate all of it because QFS?
Well, let me put it to you this way. I think the way that you're phrasing it, I would have to answer no, but I would argue that most of the crimes, most of the criminality has its root in this massive economic debt prison that we're living in. If you give people the ability to live a comfortable life and go on vacation, like so many people commit crime. I'm not suggesting that we're just going to eradicate evil wholesale just because of the QFS, and I think that's sort of what you're implying, and that's not what I was implying.
Well, I said, are we going to eliminate crime? And you said, yeah.
Well, a lot of crime.
No, high-level financial crime, yeah.
Yeah, well, what I'm suggesting is even low-level crime, or all the types of crime that you just listed, a lot of that can be traced directly back to people being inside of this financial debt prison and being
I know,
more inclined to commit those types of crimes. So if you address those issues, that's what I was suggesting. I wasn't saying that the QFS gets switched on and then all of a sudden
there is a direct correlation with economic prosperity and lower crime.
That's kind of what I was saying.
But it doesn't go away.
Okay.
I mean, let's just think of the biggest years of economic growth in the United States in the last century. It was right before I was born, because I was a baby boomer. I was born in 52. In 1947, 8, 9, 50, 51, they called it the boom years, the major reconstruction years. We had like 5-6% economic growth. We still had crime. We had low-level crime. People were busy making money, building houses, building industry, building roads. Right. We still had murder. We still had robbery. We still had rapes. We still had home invasions. Okay, I'm going to make – it's a funny little argument here, too. When I was a college sophomore, I bought my first bag of marijuana. Okay, I was not involved in organized crime, but I will admit that Steve Lascola was. His family in New Jersey facilitated that purchase. Okay. By the way, he was dead 2 years later, drug overdose. Okay. And he made a lot of fun of me, and I did not like the guy. I thought he was a true asshole. Okay. In my early years of graduate school, I did my first betting in the NFL. Now, I was not part of any drug syndicate or criminal organization, and neither was my bookie. My bookie was a private bookmaker. His name was Jeff, and we've gone our separate ways. He was a bit of a jerk, but he was my bookmaker for about 2 or 3 years. I would make money on Saturday with college football, and I would lose it on Sunday with pro football, because even the bad teams have a lot of good players. And in college football, the good teams just run it up. They want a 30-point victory. They run it up. Okay, my point is that Jeff was not an organized crime figure for his bookmaking. There's always going to be bookmaking. Here's the other example. When I visited my friend in Vermont, northern Vermont, he showed me the basement of a friend of his. It was a good friend of his. We just got a quick look. It was a marijuana farm in a basement with aluminum foil walls, dehumidifier, and the big lights to simulate sunlight. The biggest cash crop in Vermont is marijuana. Okay, these are not necessarily, some of them probably are, these are not necessarily organized crime. They're grassroots crime. Mm-hmm. We're always going to have grassroots crime because that guy was making well over $100,000 a year in a small basement marijuana farm. Okay. We're never, okay, I'll agree with you in the sense, because I like to agree with my host to be nice and polite, but
you don't have to agree with me, Jim.
No, but it's honest. We're going to eliminate the highest level financial crime. We're going to eliminate printing money and handing out 0% loans to elite trillionaires. We're going to eliminate cross-border payments in fake money, where the United States pays for hard asset goods with fake money. We're going to eliminate what else? We're going to eliminate a lot of trafficking. We're not going to eliminate all. It's going to go way down. And they're going to be rehab centers for people who are hooked on cocaine and fentanyl. I have 2 clients. It shocked me. One was a year ago, one was a year and a half ago. 2 women said, Jim, my daughter died of a fentanyl overdose. 2 fentanyl overdoses. One in California, one in Florida. We're going to eliminate a lot of lower level crime by having good business and job opportunities and education and training. We're going to eliminate bank fraud. And this is what has Wall Street scared to death. If we put stock trading on the blockchain, then their fraudulent insider trading would be easily recognized and exposed. Their algorithm trades would be easily recognized and exposed. The banking operations, if they're put on blockchain, they can no longer bring in narco money, but they might be able to do it with Bitcoin. I'm telling you, Bitcoin is not going to go away, and neither is Ethereum. I think we might see some speed improvements, some performance enhancements. They're getting a lot of competition. By the way, I think XRP is going to do really well. So is XLM. Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, we'll just put an end cap on it. And then there was one other issue I wanted to ask you about, which has to do with Ukraine, because you actually mentioned that NATO and Ukraine. But the only thing I was suggesting, all right, I'm not suggesting that I'm wildly unrealistic in terms of being able to completely eradicate evil and crime and all of those types of things. I think eventually we're probably going to get pretty close compared to where we're at now. But what I was suggesting is when you massively raise living standards and then you take out a huge swath of the evil of the world at the same time, the impetus to commit crime, I know the evil lurks in the heart. I understand all that, but the reason that so many people engage in criminal activity to begin with and then gradually escalate to worse things is because of that sense of desperation that's rooted in economics.
No doubt about that.
That's my basic argument.
No doubt about that.
And that's all I'm suggesting. So why don't we just, before we wrap it up.
Let me make a little retort.
Yeah.
Have you ever known a wealthy person who continued in criminality because it's never enough?
Well, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, like in terms of drug use or things like that, is that what you're suggesting?
No. I'm just saying that if someone is wealthy, it becomes a sport to do pilferage and theft and fraud. It's a sport.
Those are the types of people I think we're getting rid of.
I don't know about that. I know one guy who swindled
500,000 sealed indictments with up to 99 people.
I know.
We're talking about millions.
One guy who swindled me here is a multimillionaire.
Oh, I'm not doubting.
Why'd he do it? Why'd he do it? Because he could. It's a sport. It's a sport. There was the first Jack Reacher movie with Tom Cruise. The guy who had one eye and he was Russian and he came from the gulags, and he said to Rosamund Pike, "It is never enough. We do it because we can. We do it because we enjoy it. We do it because we can. It's what we do. It's never enough. They're wealthy. They still do it because it's a sport. It's ingrained. It's part of their evil DNA." Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Anyway, let's just leave that at this point. Because we got to kind of wrap it up anyway. And I really want to hear your thoughts about NATO. You mentioned NATO troops moving directly into Ukraine, planning direct strikes on Russia. Tell us about that.
Well, I'm not an expert on this, but I do believe that it is a major error for NATO. I think we're going to see a lot of casualties, deaths of NATO troops in Ukraine. I think Russia will wait for them to enter Ukraine and then obliterate them. Russia owns the skies. They own the drones. Ukraine has nothing in the skies, nothing for drones. My big concern regarding the escalation is Russia's threat to save French NATO bases, German NATO base, and there's a recent event where a Portuguese military base supplied a bunch of troops that entered Ukraine or were about to enter Ukraine. Russia has threatened that they're going to attack the bases where they come from. I think next we have to contend with the high likelihood of NATO troops being killed off in high numbers, high ratios in Ukraine by the Russians. And then it'll be, well, we got NATO blood spilled by Russian, and then I don't know what we're going to do. Let me make a forecast for you here regarding Ukraine. It's kind of sweeping. The Biden show and its Khazarian puppeteers, okay? Biden is not the president. He's the masked man. And the puppeteers are controlling this, and they also control NATO. They cross the line two ways. Last week, they had a conviction of Trump. I believe it'll be overturned, but we're likely to see a lot of U.S. military now side with the White Alliance. And we might see some from NATO side with the White Alliance. Because in NATO, they cross the other red line of capturing and using Russian assets for supplying, let's just say, warfare in Ukraine. But now NATO troops are entering. NATO equipment has already entered. That's a year ago.
Yeah.
And it all got obliterated. All got
really
destroyed.
Quickly, too.
Quickly.
Yep.
Very quickly.
And so why in the world would they send in troops? Why would they think that was going to have any sort of differing result?
Because they're wild-eyed Nazis.
Because they have no choice, basically.
They're wild-eyed Nazis who think that the objective is noble and potential possibility of defeating the Russian military. They're wild-eyed Nazis.
So when you look at this war over in Ukraine, do you see it as an organically unfolding operation, or do you think a lot of the stuff that we're being fed is not actually what's going on there? Because I've been suspecting that more and more and more, just as a general kind of philosophical.
I think that the destruction in Ukraine is very real. There are very few men between the ages of 20 and 40 now in Ukraine. Very few.
Well, I've been hearing the same thing, but you see these mainstream media reports. I don't know if you saw this one.
I don't watch any of them, so why do you?
Because they're on Telegram, and they get shared.
I don't watch any of them.
Just to track the general narrative of the mainstream media. But the point is that CBS News put out they did a whole story about the nightlife that's thriving in Kiev, and that there are more nightclubs and bars that are that have opened up than since the war started. They've
and who's frequenting those nightclubs?
The people of Ukraine, I would imagine. I don't know. It would seem to me
men don't go there because that's where they get the military press, and in less than 1 week they're on the battlefield, and 1 week later they're dead. The men are not going to nightclubs. I think we've got Ukrainian military officers going to the nightclubs. And I think their paid prostitutes go to the nightclubs because the women don't go there either.
Okay. All right. Well, I was just curious what your take on that was.
I think that there's a lot of bullshit. I take whatever's on the MSM, I do a 180s twist on it, and that's closer to reality. I have
I would
numerous
agree,
clients.
but I think the white hats are in control of it.
The White Hats are in control of Kiev, and that is their last stronghold.
Oh, I was referring at what I just said. I was referring to mainstream media. I think that the white hats have taken over mainstream media.
Oh, yeah, yes. I'm sorry, I misconstrued. The black hats have their last stronghold in Kiev. The white hats have the mainstream news. I think the mainstream news now has an objective of making Ukraine seem so utterly bullshit that the American public turns against MSM. Right now, CNN is in big, big financial trouble. They've got very little marketing revenue. There is very little electricity, water, diesel in Ukraine right now. It's a nation that is being destroyed, and the only thing left is metropolitan Kiev. They lost Kharkov. They're losing everything surrounding Kiev. I believe there is a massive tunnel structure under Kiev.
Oh, yeah. I agree there.
And some of it is being destroyed and some of it is not. It's hard to get really accurate, reliable information about what's happening in Kiev. Mm-hmm. I want to see on mainstream news or a lot of highly publicized social media the Nazi element with swastikas. Blinken was seen last week, playing music in a nightclub.
Yeah.
And if you look around, you'll see swastikas. Okay. The swastikas are not yet in the mainstream news. Most Americans don't think of Ukraine as being a Nazi enclave. Most Americans are dumber than a rock, but they're waking up in big, big numbers.
I would agree with it.
I think there's an objective of the white hats to make it as absurd as possible.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well,
and it doesn't have much more time left. I didn't get to my big forecast.
Oh, sorry. Go back.
No, it's okay. I lost track of my own thought process and sequence. Because Biden, let's call it the Biden show with the actor, whatever. Because the Biden show crossed the red line using the court system against Trump, and because the Biden show crossed the red line in seizing Russian assets and delivering NATO troops, the Biden show will be canceled very soon. They're tempting nuclear exchange with Russia.
Now, when you say ended or canceled very soon, but
I don't know what soon is. I think they crossed the red line. They're going to lose their support. And who knows? Maybe by September, the Biden show dissolves.
Well,
remember,
we have an election coming up.
Trump will run largely unopposed. Remember.
Okay.
So what does that mean? It means no opposition. Well, what does that mean? It means Biden's not around. Well, what does that mean? Biden is dead. Biden is exposed. The mask is pulled off. Biden drops out. Or Biden is dismissed by his own managers in a deal. He crossed the red line.
So the figurehead, the puppet, is going to be propped up just to get long enough to get through the election, you think?
I think he's going to get propped up for a while longer, and because he crossed the red line twice, he's going to be removed. And Trump will run largely unopposed.
Now, a couple minutes ago, you had said that you think Biden is being puppeteered by the Khazarian mafia, right?
Yeah,
Well, we spoke about that offline.
It depends on the day of the week, Patrick. Who knows? Maybe 2 days a week it's the Khazarian mafia, and the rest of the time it's the White Hat Alliance. Okay, we do not know what's going on behind the scenes. We have a lot of evidence that the Biden show is a fascist demo to wake up the American people with a very good motive.
Yep.
We have a lot of evidence that it's very evil and committing deep fraud and murder, genocide. I learned in marketing research a long time ago. It's never one or the other. It's always a combination. It's always, well, what's your weighting factor? I think it's 80% white hat control of Biden show, 20% Khazarian mafia, and falling. And he crossed the red line. If we get an incident where, let's just say, 150 French and German troops are obliterated in Ukraine, they might react